This isn't just a flashlight, this is a 1000 watt handheld sun. And if I turn it on without cooling, these 10 massive LED chips will literally desolder themselves in seconds. So I had to build a full liquid cooling system using high-end gaming PC parts. It's completely overkill and I love it. A single 100 watts LED module cost only $2 and cranks out almost 10,000 lumens, which is already impressive, but I wanted to go full overkill mode and wire 10 of them together for a 1 kilowatt beast. Now, you don't need a degree in thermodynamics to know that this much power generates a massive amount of heat. Since I wanted this flashlight to be as compact as possible, so traditional heatsinks with fans were out of question. They are just too bulky and heavy. After some brainstorming, I landed on a better solution, a full liquid cooling loop using personal computer water cooling components. I picked up these aluminum radiators. They are cheap, comes in various sizes, and this 240 by 40mm version is the perfect home for 5 LED modules. Add a second one and all 10 LEDs have a place to live. To get the space right, I had to account the diffusers and lenses sitting on top. The mounting frames that came with the LEDs were, well, ugly, bulky, and generally useless for this build. This brought me to my first real hurdle. These modules and lenses are designed to be bolted down through pre-drill holes using machine screws. The problem? My radiator is a solid piece of aluminum with internal cooling channels. If I'll try to drill or tap into it, I'll hit a channel, leak coolant everywhere, and turn my sun into a very expensive puddle. I had to think outside the box, so I designed and 3D printed custom brackets. The idea is a sandwich design. Brackets on the bottom hold the heat blocks in place, while creating mounting points to clamp the LED corners. For the top, I designed a unified lens bracket, because the stock ones were a total mess. These square plates press down the remaining LED corners while locking the reflectors and lenses firmly in place. It took quite few iterations to dial in the measurements, and aside from this pile of shame of test prints, I'm really happy with the result. A great feature of this design is that it is completely modular. You can build a flashlight of almost any size to suit your needs, just by choosing the right number of LED chips and matching radiator. That being said, regardless of how many LEDs you go with, the heat is no joke. Even with liquid cooling, the temperatures near to chips can still reach the point where plastic starts to lose its structural integrity. To keep everything from melting down, the smart move was to have these parts made from aluminum. I used a one-stop shop called Justway to bring these designs to life. My design files require 3 different manufacturing processes. I started with a CNC service for heat block brackets. I simply exported my designs as a step files from Fusion 360 and dragged and dropped them directly to Justway website. From there, I can choose from huge variety of materials, but I stick to the aluminum 6061. The lens bracket, due to its complex shape, could only be 3D printed, and to save weight, I'll go with aluminum as well. And lastly, those teeny tiny tension clips should be laser cut from 1mm stainless steel. With all the files uploaded, I get a price back instantly as well as the lead time. And something like 2 weeks later, these things were at my door. If you need professional grade parts for your projects quickly and at great price, I can't recommend Justway enough. And to get a chunk off of your next order, be sure to redeem the code Justway at weldandtips-10. The quality of these parts is stunning. It's a great feeling to swap out my plastic prototypes for a real deal. To ensure maximum thermal conductivity, I applied a thin film of thermal paste to the back of every LED. During the install, you have to be extremely careful not to swap the polarity, otherwise the LEDs just won't fire up. I used M3 machine screws in the corners to secure the laser cut clips, which clamped the modules down. This was actually my first time handling 3D printed metal parts, and I am beyond stoked with how they turned out. Since I nailed the design during prototyping phase, everything sits perfectly. A few M5 bolts later, the main 10-chip heat block unit was finally complete. To power this monstrosity, I'm using not one, but 2 1800 watts step-up boost converters. These things are beasts. They can take an input from 10 to 60 volts and boost it all the way up to 90 volts. They come with 3 built-in fuses, undervoltage protection, and most importantly, full adjustment for both constant current and constant voltage. Getting all that for under $20 is honestly impressive. I debated different wiring setups, but the most efficient way was to use 2 power supplies and split the LEDs into 2 groups. I'll get into exact calibration later, but here's the layout. Group 1 consists of 4 LEDs. I wire 2 in series and then pair those 2 groups in parallel. Group 2 features the remaining 6 LEDs wired in 3 series pairs connected in parallel. This setup is all about optimizing the workload for the power supplies and keeping the output current as low as possible. Pairing the modules was incredibly easy thanks to the mounting design. I just soldered them together through the gaps using hot iron and some solder. To link them in parallel, I went a bit overkill with 10 AVG silicon wire. I'm a huge fan of silicon wire. The flexibility and high temperature resistance make it must-have for builds like this. Next, I need a frame. I grabbed some 2mm aluminum strip from the hardware store, bent them into loops, and separated them with the aluminum sheet. To sandwich the frame with the LED block unit, I used those M5 threaded holes I designed in the aluminum brackets. I fastened it as much as I could by tapping threads directly into aluminum and used countersunk machine screws for a clean look. The whole rig sit on 3 rubber feet to keep it off the ground. Both boost converters are mounted on metal standoffs. This lifts them off the aluminum base just enough to ensure decent airflow for the cooling fans. Since I couldn't find standoffs at the exact height I wanted, I just stacked a 45mm and 10mm together. It's a simple, modular solution that got me the perfect height. All that heat has to go somewhere, and that's where this 80 by 160mm radiator comes in. It arrived without fans, but I found a few slightly used ones in my random parts drawer, so I saved a few bucks and repurposed them. The radiator has a very flat side, so mounting it was just a matter of using few L-shaped aluminum brackets and some machine screws. For the plumbing, I'm using a small water cooling pump with a built-in 100ml reservoir. The sweet spot for this is right between the heat block and the radiator. This keeps the hose runs short and they look tidy. I stuck with silicone hoses because they are super flexible, but even they have a limit. Once you hit a certain bend radius, they start to kink. That was actually the main limiting factor here. It's the reason I couldn't make the hose any shorter or overall plumbing any more compact. I filled the system with the distilled water and let it run for a minute to self-bleed and push all the air out of the loops. Once the bubble stopped, we're officially watertight. To juice this thing, I'm using this 6S LiPo battery, which is rated for up to 120 amps of discharge. My system should pull less than half of that, but that's still a massive amount of current to have sitting in your hands. To control it safely, I built a dedicated circuit using an 80 amps ENS fuse with a proper fuse box, a pre-charge resistor, a dual potentiometer, a pair of switches, and various crimson connectors. But the star of this show is this absolutely massive 24 volts relay rated for 200 amps. Compared to a regular 12 volts relay, you can really feel the size and beefness of this thing. I leave links for this and all other parts in the description if you want to pick them up for your projects. Here's the control logic. The first button handles the fans and the water pump. This lets me run the cooling system independently from the LEDs, just in case I want to keep the liquid moving after the lights is turned off. These are fed through a step-down converter adjusted to 12 volts. The second button is a 3-position switch. Middle position, everything is off. First position is the pre-charge state. It sends power to the boost converters by bypassing the main relay through a small 10-watt resistor. This primes the capacitors in the step-up converters and help us avoid a massive soul-crushing inrush current when the full power is applied. Second position activates the main relay. Current now flows directly to the boost converters and LEDs while simultaneously disconnecting the pre-charge circuit. I also added a dimming feature using dual potentiometer. Dual simply means that with a single turn of the knob, I'm controlling 2 separate circuits, one for each boost converter and their respective LED groups. It is wired in parallel with the boost converter's own onboard onboard potentiometers, which controls the output current. I'll use the internal trimmers on the board to set my current sailing the absolute maximum, while the external knob will be my day-to-day dimmer for brightness control. Before firing everything up, I need to calibrate the boost converters for the correct voltage and current and set the under voltage protection. Let's start with the UVP. This is the critical feature to protect the battery from over-discharging. You really don't want to run a 6S LiPo below 20 volts. To calibrate this, I need to simulate a low battery state by connecting a 20 volt source to the converter's input. A partially discharged Makita battery works perfectly for this. Once I have 20 volts at the input, I turn the UVP potentiometer clockwise until the onboard LED lights up. From now on, the controller will treat this voltage as the floor, triggering the protection and shutting down the system to save my power source. Next step, constant voltage. Each LED module needs about 33 volts to run smoothly. Since I'm wiring them in series pairs, I need my output to be at least 66 volts, but I left some headroom and set it to 70. I dialed this in using the voltage potentiometer on both converters. At the same time, I'm turning the constant current potentiometers counterclockwise on both boards for about 20-30 rotations until I hear a faint clicking sound. This ensures that when I first power them on, the output current starts at minimum. Now for the tricky part, constant current. This has to be calibrated under real-world load conditions. To see exactly how much juice is going to the LEDs, I picked up this compact and reasonably priced 100 amps power meter. I wired it between the converter output and LED area. When I flip the power, the LEDs should either be off or barely glowing because the constant current is set to minimum. A single LED module pulls 3 amps at full power. For the first group of 4 LEDs, that means a target of 6 amps, but the converter choked at 4.6 amps and just won't budge further. I saw similar limitation with the 6 LED group, which topped out at 6 amps instead of the aimed 9 amps. Looks like I hit an unexpected engineering wall. These boost converters are monsters, but they have a physical limit when it comes to a voltage gap between input and output, and I definitely learned that in the hard way. Moving from a 24 volts battery up to 70 volts is a massive jump. The only way to push past this and hit the full 1000 watt will be to use second 6S LiPo battery wired in series for an 48 volts input. A smaller voltage gap will make the converters much more efficient and unlock the extra current. Unfortunately, those extra batteries were out of stock everywhere I looked, so for now we are settling for about 700 real watts due to that 24 volts limitation. To juice this battery up, I'm using the M7AC. Honestly, the best compact smart charger on the market. It is small, powerful, and gives me all the data I need on individual cells. To keep the battery from sliding around inside the frame, I 3D printed a custom tray and secured it with double-sided tape. The battery just slides in and stays locked in place thanks to the raised edges of the mount, with a velcro strap over the top for final security. I closed up the fuse box and thanks to the small window I can still check the state at a glance. A handle was crucial for portability, so I built one using a few aluminum-shaped parts bolted together. The final touch was securing the control panel on the freshly attached handle. Here's how it works. First button turns on fans and water cooling pump to keep the system from melting down. 3-position switch at the middle, everything is off. The third position is the pre-charge state. It primes the step-up converters to avoid a massive inrush current. Even at this stage, the LED starts to barely glow. Position 2 activates the main relay, sending full current directly to the converters and LEDs. The dimmer? Well, that speaks for itself. Just turn the knob for instant daylight. Even though the converters have built-in undervoltage protection, I like to monitor the battery through the small LiPo voltage tester. It connects to the balance leads and triggers a loud buzzer if the voltage drops too low, while cycling through individual cell voltages on the screen. Before hitting the dark, I brought out a couple of competitors for some perspective. A small 10-watt LED pocket flashlight and my own 100-watt homemade build from 9 years ago. It uses the same single 100 watts LED chip, and until today, I was always impressed by how powerful it was. But let's see if a 1000 watt liquid-cooled flashlight actually makes any sense, or if it just performs as widely as it looks. The 10 watts flashlight has a decent throw, and it is what most people will call bright. Next, the 100 watt DIY version. It is still a beast, but compared to modern tech, it might be starting to look a bit adorable. Holy shit! That is terrifying. When I flick the switch to full power, it doesn't just light up the path, it literally deletes the night. And just for fun, let's look at the low beams and the high beams of a modern car. Yeah, the car's headlights just got absolutely decimated. Imagine hitting the highway with the output of this thing. The cooling system is working perfectly. Even after a few minutes of continuous runtime at full power, the water temperature is holding steady. This build is completely unnecessary, a bit heavy, and slightly dangerous if you point it in the wrong direction. In other words, it's exactly what I was hoping for. In case I decide that 1000 watts just isn't enough anymore, what I should build next? Drop your wildest ideas in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one.